together through passport control on the first floor to the final departure lounge.
For passengers Bailey, Gill and Alfred, please go immediately to gate 53 where the flight is now closing.
There's no fuel available there until the end of the week. So this evening...
No fuel at all, then, right?
None at all, no. This evening's flight, we're going to have to uplift 21,900 kilos of fuel to arrive Khartoum with sufficient fuel to go through Addis Ababa.
Enough fuel from here to go through, no doubt.
Correct. We've had a request from the Crown Prince of Bahrain. He wants to fly to Washington and Concord and to accommodate the royal party. We're removing row 1.
Fine, okay. Anything else?
This is the British Airways Operations Centre in London. Every major international airline has a similar communications hub, which is in touch with its aircraft and ground installations around the world. And since most news is bad news, this is where the problems finish up. A jumbo needs a new engine in Delhi. In Frankfurt, a crew member has fallen ill. There are thunderstorms in Chicago and typhoons in Hong Kong. In Sydney, the baggage handlers are on strike, and in Khartoum, there's a shortage of fuel. Spend a few days in a place like this and you begin to wonder how any journey by air is ever completed. And quite apart from operational difficulties, because it involves crossing frontiers, the airline business is highly political and has infinite possibilities for discord between nations. In fact, international air travel is only possible because it's governed by a tangle of treaties, protocols and accords, covering everything from landing rights to the size of a passenger's seat. And even then, a war or a revolution can instantly make nonsense of those carefully negotiated agreements. I can think of no business that is so vulnerable, that can be adversely affected so rapidly all over the world by events in one place. Now, these special circumstances make special demands on airline people, not only on these people, but on the small teams of managers and engineers way down the line who deal with problems on the spot as they arise. The Arabian Gulf. For nearly 5,000 years of recorded history, since the days of Sinbad the Sailor, this has been a thriving mercantile crossroads. While Europe lay in the shadow of the Dark Ages, great sailing dhows carried Arab-Islamic civilization far across the oceans and returned with slaves and spices and gold. And gold is still what the Gulf is all about. With more than $50 billion in oil revenues to spend annually, the Gulf states have become a 20th century El Dorado, not least for the airlines. Air traffic between the Middle East and the rest of the world is now growing more rapidly than any other region, providing rich pickings for Arabs and infidels alike. British Airways have a long-standing partnership in the Gulf with the Kanu family. As BA's general agents, they've grown and flourished with the airline business.
Yeah, still within the budget, still under 19,000. What's the 7 million they order? Cranes, bobcats and all these things, which is really moving very fast because we are short on the stock.
Today, the Kanu commercial empire, controlled by 7 brothers, has spread throughout the world, embracing shipping, insurance and oil, as well as aviation services. Back in 1937, Yusuf bin Ahmed Kanu was appointed agent for the Imperial Airways flying boat service to the Gulf. At Bahrain, when the flying boats landed, old Ahmed Kanu would ferry fuel and passengers to and from the aircraft. It was a cozy relationship in those days, an old boy network of sheikhs, local merchants and airline people, an arrangement that continued when Imperial became BOAC. Today, British Airways is well established throughout the Gulf. Undoubtedly, the legacy of those early imperial days with the Kanus and the sheikhs is a head start for the present management team operating down the line. These young men are now in a strong position to grab a healthy share of a rapidly growing travel market.
How are the Seychelles bookings going, actually, Paul?
Very encouraging.
Because the
actually.
advertising started now.
Yeah. Well, we ran an ad on Sunday in the Gulf Weekly Mirror, and that stimulated a fair amount of demand. But even before that, I gathered we were just about sold out.
This is a company within a company, a nucleus of salesmen and troubleshooters hand-picked for the area. Tim Phillips, a 30-year-old Cambridge graduate and tennis blue, heads the team. For Phillips, the top priority in the Gulf is, of course, to sell airplane tickets. But other concerns sometimes take over.
We are one of the spokes, if you like, of the main wheel, with the hub being in London. And if, for instance, you get very bad weather like we had recently, the snow and so on in London, then this has a knock-on effect down the route. So that we get a fair number of problems of that sort. Locally, our problems, I think, are related to marketing our product in a very rapidly changing environment. If you consider the world today, the Middle East is changing faster, perhaps, than anywhere else in the world. And as far as we're concerned, it's a question of running to keep still.
And even if you run faster than everyone else, as British Airways certainly does with Concord, you don't necessarily win the race. Faced with opposition almost everywhere else, the elegant and controversial Concord was actually welcomed in Bahrain, a vital stop en route to Singapore. Concord's warm reception here depends entirely on the goodwill of the palace. In this semi-feudal society, if the ruler says Concorde can land, then it lands, as the airline knows only too well.
British Airways has been operating through this part of the world for many years, 30+ years, under different names, Imperial Airways, BOAC and so on. But it does mean that we have a very good range of relationships. Arab hospitality is very well known. It is the custom that you go and you have coffee with people and establish a certain rapport with them before you really talk about business very much with them. So where you have key contacts, it's very desirable if you can establish this rapport so that when a problem does come up, then you can go to them for advice.
And so, British Airways, represented by Tim Phillips, regularly attends the ruler's Majlis, a council of the leading families, where the subjects of His Highness Amir Sheikh Isa bin Sulman Al Khalifa are free to approach the ruler with their grievances and petitions.
His Highness holds a Majlis several times a week, and it must be one of the few places in the world where a ruler or whatever system of government it happens to be is accessible to the people. So far as I'm concerned, in the Majlis, it's a question of going in and being seen to be there as British Airways. It is a courtesy in this part of the world that one should exercise by going in and just paying one's respects. And that is something that British Airways has done for many years.
And so the Majlis provides a chance to be seen by people who matter, and perhaps even to be summoned to a private audience with the ruler. The ordeal by incense and rosewater and tiny cups of bitter coffee is a small price to pay, for this is the essence of business protocol in the Arab world.
If there is a Bahraini who has a special petition that he wishes to present or who has a problem, then it's very nice. They are welcome to go up and present their petition to His Highness, who no doubt considers it, and something happens. The ruler in Bahrain has always taken a direct personal interest in the Concord operations. Presumably he feels that Concord is good for Bahrain, and as such he has taken this personal interest. Periodically, one can also make an appointment for an audience, and at such an audience tell him how Concord is going. Thank you very much for receiving me, Your Highness.
Oh, thank you.
This morning.
Pleasure. Yes.
I know of your personal interest in our Concord operations.
Yes.
And so I came to tell you how we were getting on and how things have been going since we started the service through to Singapore.
Yes.
And I'm pleased to say it's going very well.
Well,
And particularly going through from Bahrain to London. We're 3 times a week now. And our loads are averaging 70–75% full.
yes. Well, I am glad to hear that. And as you know, we welcome the Concord to land in Bahrain. And as you know, our friendship with Britain for many years. And we feel very proud.
Operating Concord has proved to be a commercial and political minefield. In Bahrain, it brings prestige, but to other nations of the Gulf, it brings only a sonic boom. And yet the right to overfly supersonically is crucial, especially over Oman, a major sector on the journey to Singapore.
Do you reckon that you got good mileage out of family favourites down in Salalah?
They said people down there were moved to tears when they actually heard their families.
Winning friends for the airline down here has a high priority in the public relations effort in the Gulf. So it's not surprising that Tim Phillips takes every opportunity to visit Niall Hickey, his man in Oman.
Banners up, you know, British Airways welcomes you, it's nice to have you with us, all in Arabic.
That's right, I mean, it's a fairly expensive thing to set up.
That's
we
right,
need to take studios in London. That's why I wanted to make sure you reckoned you got mileage.
Yeah, sure, I understand the studio time expense and everything, but we get the spin-off of a tremendous amount of traffic back to UK and not. It's very worthwhile. We make a lot of money out of it.
Oman has granted Concord a 6-month trial period, and that is coming up for renegotiation. Tim Phillips must try to find out if anything might hinder the extension of those vital traffic rights. The British Embassy is the first stop in a round of visits that will help him to take the temperature of local opinion in the places where it matters.
It's one of the nicest embassies I've ever seen in the world. It's really what British Embassy should be.
Like the other Gulf states, the Sultanate of Muscat and Oman has a close historical relationship with Britain, which it's the task of the embassy to preserve and foster. The fact that the present Sultan came to power with British support must help, as undoubtedly did a recent royal visit. In a part of the world where monarchy is understood and respected, Queen Elizabeth was rapturously received and showered with gifts and honours. The spin-off in terms of commercial goodwill is one of the advantages that the airline hopes it can rely on.
Hello, Tim. Good morning, sir. Nice to see you back again.
Hi, Mr. Treadwell. How are you?
Fine. Hold on. That's beautiful. Yes, it really is. This is the first time we've been upstairs for a long time.
Yeah.
Certainly not since the Queen's visit. Britannia, as you know, Niall, anchored right out there with that small, fast patrol boat.
Yes.
No, it really is a perfect setting.
Yes, it's lovely.
The sort of setting where it almost seems improper to discuss crude commercial matters.
Of course, I was a little disappointed that Concord couldn't be found to take the Queen away from the sea. That would have been the absolute final climax of the visit.
Oh, yes, I know.
Now, what's your visit this time for?
The thing is, our rights for overflying were for 6 months trial period, and they'll be coming up for renewal in July. So we wondered if, what your opinion was, whether we should set the wheels in motion through the government, through the embassy, in May, just for renewal.
July there.
July, yes.
The first flight
January
was
to July, yes. January 21st.
So that's 6 months trial, or the first phase.
Suddenly, and almost innocently, the ambassador drops a bombshell, a scrap of diplomatic gossip that could well present British Airways with yet another Concord crisis.
Last week I was sitting in the middle of the desert with Sheikh Zayed, the president of the United Arab Emirates, and we were having a cup of coffee. Halfway between Abu Dhabi and Al Ain, and there were camels, and there was peace and serenity and occasional gossip, and then suddenly, crack! Sheikh Zayed turned to me and he said, Concord. He knew what it was. And it is a very eerie thing to be surrounded by desert and to look up into the sky after that bang, and you hear nothing at all, there's just blue
At this
sky.
stage, it's only gossip. But if it turns out to be true, then it will be very serious. Wrangles with Malaysia over Concord traffic rights delayed the opening of the service to Singapore by months. If now one of the autocratic and willful Gulf rulers chooses to change his mind and close his country's airspace to Concord, then it might be the end. The essence of a supersonic aircraft is that it flies supersonically. If that's not achieved, it's utterly pointless. Ironically, in these little desert states along the Gulf, there is perhaps the greatest concentration of potential Concord travellers to be found anywhere. In Bahrain, the ruler's new racetrack was designed by a British engineer, commuting twice weekly between London and the Gulf. Stuart Mobsby has used the service more than 100 times just to save a couple of hours on each trip. Why do you like travelling on Concord? I mean, you say this when
Well, I mean, basically, there's nobody is going to spend, the best part of 8 hours flying to Europe when they can do it in 4.
I mean, is the time factor that important to you and that valuable to you?
Oh, it is a difference of arriving, feeling like going to work and feeling like death. I could go to London and be on my way back in less than 24 hours. And, you know, the whole trip took me actually 2.5 days.
Now, I think I'm bound to ask you this. I mean, is your journey really necessary? I mean, do you really need to go backwards and forwards that much?
Well, you can't run a project of this sort when you're trying to hit a tight schedule by letter or by telex or by even telephone. You have to be there.
But it's not with the Mobsbys or with Concord that the real market lies. It's with the huge numbers of low-fare passengers, immigrant workers from the Indian subcontinent who flooded into the Gulf since the oil boom began. They've come in such numbers that in some states they vastly outnumber the native inhabitants. In the case of the United Arab Emirates, by a factor of 6 to 1. Here in Dubai, the immigrants have done everything that the local Bedouin won't do, which means they've done everything. To build the largest dry dock in the world, the contractors, Costain Taylor Woodrow, spent £500,000 flying in 7,000 construction workers from India and Pakistan. And airport construction is proceeding at a phenomenal speed. Throughout the Arab world, £1,000 million is earmarked for 60 new airport programs. Saudi Arabia proudly claims that every town in her huge territory is within 70 miles of a modern jet airport. Even little Dubai is doubling the capacity of this international airport. All this means new opportunities for the airlines.
You may get overnight an announcement that there's a huge new project that's going to be undertaken in one state where they maybe expect 4,000 immigrant workers to come in. This is the sort of news which we're all the time ferreting around to try to get hold of because we want to get our share of this business.
Welcome, my dear.
From where are you coming now?
Come from Bahrain.
Welcome from Abu Dhabi.
A lot of the work that I'm doing is travelling around the Gulf states, trying to keep my finger on the pulse, if you like, trying to find out what actually is going on, such that British Airways stays up with the game.
And the game in the neighbouring and even wealthier oil-producing state of Abu Dhabi? Yet another new international airport. When it's completed, this £140 million project will add one more grandiose installation to an area that's already more lavishly provided with international airports than anywhere else in the world. The United Arab Emirates alone have 4. Transportation experts say that 1 would have been enough. The fact is, the feudal rulers of the Gulf have given priority to projects they felt symbolized the modern state, and that means airports. What cathedrals were to medieval monarchs, airports are to the leaders of the developing world.
So a passenger who's arriving here and wants to get off and check in, he'll drive, there'll be a road straight up to the front of the terminal building, is there?
Yes. He will drive up, he will drop the passenger. If it's a taxi, he will go down to the taxi park. If he's private, he will go to the private park.
Yes. And that's the mosque up there, isn't it?
That is the mosque, which is inside, near the departure area.
And anybody can go into the mosque?
Yes, because that will be on public area, where everybody can, if his aircraft being delayed or something, or people coming with their family and saying goodbye to their family, they can go in the time for praying.
Yeah. This is going to be the check-in area side.
Yes, this is the company's counter will be here, where you check in, and you bring your luggage and check in your luggage with the ticket.
Yes.
And after that, you go direct to the immigration to check your passport.
Yes. Will the individual airlines, like British Airways, have its own check-in counter which we can look after ourselves?
Each airline will...
Of course, it's all happened because the Gulf now produces half the world's oil. Throughout the region, the rapid rise of air transport has marched alongside the oil-based boom of 1973. It's been a truly symbiotic relationship, one industry feeding off the other in so many different ways. In their effort to build an industrial base as quickly as possible, the oil states have used air transport as it's never been used before. And for the airlines, the market is never ending.
When do you think that sort of format for an oil camp is right?
I think it's the only way we can do it now. I mean, this is the fourth time we've used oil in various places like Dassan and before. And if we just go in there cold, they're going to be very cynical. They're not going to be interested, and they're thinking we're going to be ripping them off. We've got to have
Among the thousands of American and European contract workers in the oil fields, 20,000 are British. Always a tempting target for a sales promotion drive. They're well paid and they get generous leave. But to persuade them to fly the flag won't necessarily be easy.
It's the only live entertainment they get maybe in a year.
Sure.
And they've got nothing else and they will go on. And we can get our message because we can insist upon it.
How hot would it be out there now? About 200 degrees or something?
No, it's not. It's only about 90. It's not very hot.
An Irish folk singer and an air stewardess are the supporting act for the salesman.
I hear they've got the best beer in Abu Dhabi at ASAP. Fine English ale.
I keep on thinking I see pubs because it's opening time, you see, back in England. Keep on waiting for a big Guinness sign to flash up.
The show is on the road, or it would be if there were one. 100 miles across the desert, the airline's sales team hope to sell air travel to the affluent oilmen of ASAB.
Did you hear about the Irish mosquito?
No, I didn't.
Caught malaria.
I'm Leadfingers Murphy, but my story's seldom told. But I massacre folk music with a yard of German plywood and a plectrum. I do requests, just the ones that have two chords in.
Folk singer Noel Murphy has been this way before. Material tailor-made for the cloistered community of the oil camp is the soft sell to hard men.
It's going to be one of them nights.
And Ros Hanby is no stranger to the sales game either. For years now, Ros Hanby has been the public face of British Airways. She's the lady who takes more care of you in the airline's posters and commercials. As a practicing air stewardess, she knows that personal service is all important. But promoting that image in an oil camp requires special talents.
Each promotion has to be approached in a completely different way. I don't go there thinking, right, I'm going to sell tickets by fluttering my eyelashes at somebody who hasn't seen a lady for 2 months.
The first thing I want to do is call Dave Bennett over here. Come on. Oh, dear, that made me unpopular.
The these chaps that just don't see girls. I mean, just a company of a girl, just to tell a few jokes and have a few drinks and chat in a very relaxed way.
Sorry, fella.
Obviously, the fact that I'm a woman is going to have some impact.
Close to this thing. We've brought you a little present, all of you, and I'm going to give it to Dave this evening.
Cartridge in. There we are.
I've never done this.
These are hard boys. They're really well-travelled. They've probably been around the world more than me. They don't want a little sort of girl to sit there fluttering her eyelashes.
Thank you. That's right. Cuddle it in. Snuggle it down. That's it.
And you told me to aim above.
That's it. Aim well above and slightly to the right. That's a bit higher. That's about right.
Is that about
there.
right?
Yes, that's about right. Slightly to the right.
First go! Well done. Oh, aren't I brilliant?
You know, I've opened shops and I've addressed women's institutes and I've been out into the wilds of Borneo and I've been to sort of Glasgow. Every day is completely different.
Selling aeroplane seats really means selling service, which is what Joe Ford tries to provide. Ford is one of the backstage members of the Gulf team, whose job it is to see that your experience of flying bears some resemblance to all those glamorous advertisements. As the BA catering representative for the Gulf area, he's responsible for all those little trays and what goes into them.
One of the main problems we have here is climatically this is a difficult part of the world, dreadfully hot summers, and traditionally not a lot has been grown that we can use locally. It means that most of the food that we utilise for our aircraft and the caterers on our behalf is imported. But we have something on the doorstep here where literally we will be serving salad items and hopefully other things in addition to salad items within hours of being picked. And to have a guaranteed supply of quality salad items throughout the year takes a great headache away from us all. We don't have to worry about a season availability, something not arriving, a ship being late or an air freight, which is, you know, literally very rare in this day and age.
The something which excites Ford is called hydroponics. The science of gardening without soil has suddenly opened up extraordinary possibilities. The carefully controlled use of desalinated water from the sea, fertilizer and sunshine has made the desert green. Ford is on his way to see for himself what the gardening pioneers can offer to embellish his daily menus. In Abu Dhabi, there's trouble. The ambassador's scrap of gossip about Concord is taking on a more concrete and alarming shape. Tim Phillips is summoned to the office of the Abu Dhabi Director of Civil Aviation, where the rumour of Concord's nuisance becomes an official complaint.
Tim, I have to tell you something about the routing of the Concord. You know, we have the routing at this moment, you know, just over Al Ain and on your way to Singapore. And I thought whether it is better that you could have straight the other way or you just fly over the sea, because people have heard a very remarkable sound. I have a complaint the other day that...
For Phillips, the trouble is that the people who are upset are very special people. It's the ruler of Abu Dhabi himself, and he is never ignored.
And they have telephoned me, what is this? We have 7 minutes or 8 minutes, some explosion. Somebody have flown over us very fast, and I have asked my control people here at the control, and they told me it is the Concord passing at that time, and it was about 11:30 on Saturday.
At 11:30?
Yes.
Okay, well I will investigate, because it's possible that it was one of your Defence Force jets.
No, I don't think so, because we have restricted area for them. We don't let them come in the civil aviation routings.
Because since we started on January the 24th, we haven't had any complaints. This is the first mention that I have heard, and I had hoped
yes, but
that the
you know,
there
are saying also, they say, I don't know how true it is, that they have miscarriages of their animals, cows and and even the chickens. They say that they don't make eggs, not like before.
The eggs are getting smaller because of Concord, are they?
Well, I don't really know. We don't have anything to prove such things.
All I can say
But,
is that we take it very seriously. I will investigate this complaint on Saturday the 3rd,
Yes.
and I will let you know exactly when the aircraft would have been over Airways.
Yes, yes.
And if there is a problem, then obviously
we will
investigate it and we will take the matter further.
And I thought whether either you change like this or you change just to cross.
Our route from Bahrain to Singapore takes us over Abu Dhabi at supersonic speeds. If they are unhappy with this for whatever reason, I mean, I think His Excellency Ali Khalfan, when he was, making the jokes about camels and chickens, that was just an aside, if you like. The basic issue is one that is very important, and we take it extremely seriously.
You're pretty lucky here. I mean, relatively sheltered.
A less awkward encounter faces Joe Ford. At the Gulf Growers hydroponic farm in Oman, he must judge the quality of a lettuce.
I find this incredible, this growth structure and no soil.
But that's... I think they've been sprayed. They're not sprayed or anything like that.
No?
You can try them. It's quite...
And the people here like this type of lettuce.
Giving him the sales pitch is John Pilcher, an estate agent from England who threw up everything to grow vegetables in the desert. The idea came to him on board an aircraft over the Gulf. Reading an article on hydroponics, he realized that the commercial possibilities of the system lay in the desert beneath him. And he's proved himself right. Not just that the system works, but that the market is here. The airlines, as he suspected, have been among his best customers.
But it's now really come on well. You'll be interested in that, would you?
Certainly. I'm just looking at mint and parsley, the two together. We try and feature something on the menu that at least lends itself to the part of the world we're in. And to be honest, it's difficult in the Gulf. And the thing that comes to mind looking at those two items is tabbouleh,
yes, the Lebanese tabbouleh.
Lebanese tabbouleh, which would make a nice hors d'oeuvre.
Very nice.
And you've got two of the main ingredients staring me in the face.
Exactly.
This will be fine.
Well, we can do it. I mean, the mint, no problem. Well, I mean, the thing is, really, if you can tell me the sort of things that you would like to put on, luxury items, upmarket things, that not necessarily large quantities.
Here in the Gulf, where there are so many dietary taboos, where every kind of meat is shunned by some religious group or other, where seafood is definitely risky, for the airlines, fresh salad is certainly a welcome starter.
I'm not sure if that's wishful thinking or whether the car's actually moving.
Deep in the desert, the sales drive has encountered a temporary setback.
You have to put it on, I think he has to put it on the low thing.
Isn't it on the low already?
No, it's been on high all the time. Go backwards, if that's okay. Are we digging in again?
Yeah.
Oh, no. This is really far beyond a joke now. Everybody out.
Never a joke to start with. Oh, well.
What's plan A?
Plan A.
B. No, it's plan B now, isn't it?
Feed the Irishman. You should have brought me bucket and shovel. Hit me with your shovel, Mick. Hit me.
Yes, I will in a minute if you don't do your fair share of the work.
Give an Aspro a headache, do you know that?
You can't say I'm not infinitely adaptable in my job.
There's no real answer to that.
In these harsh lands, without local help, the outsider cannot go very far. Omir Ben Youssef, who's British Airways agent in Abu Dhabi, is doing what he can to help the airline with its Concord problem. When this old Bedouin gives an impromptu lunch party, the guests include the hugely powerful and wealthy oil minister for Abu Dhabi, complete with bodyguards. How this man thinks and acts could have the most far-reaching consequences for the economies of the Western world, and yet he's not too grand to accept an invitation from an old friend. Here in the Arab world, who you know is every bit as important as what you know, and so cultivating the right friends is a #1 business priority. At a gathering like this, all the strands come together: oilmen, diplomats, local leaders and foreign business interests, including British Airways. In the Gulf, without some kind of social love play, it's difficult to bring any business deal to a climax. And so this is much more than a mutton grab, as the British call it, much more than a gastronomic treat. Above all, it's a perfect occasion for Tim Phillips to inquire informally whether the ruler has had a change of heart on the question of Concord's route. An opportunity to stress the vital importance of the present routing and the damage that drastic changes might do to Concord's future. But of course, on the surface, it's nothing more than a group of old friends around the table.
9 hours once I was inside the aircraft in London for 9 hours just waiting for the de-icer.
I have checked up on the flight, the one on Saturday,
yes,
the 3rd. And the timing, Concord was on time.
Anyway, I want you to study this matter and we see to solve it.
Yes, well, we will do this. But
you see, now I'm telling Tim how you fly Concord on Europe subsonic and you fly over us supersonic.
When they flew over DAS supersonic, we hardly heard it.
Oh, then we will divert the flight there.
And it's 10 miles high at that stage, and they have no sensation.
But now we want Tim to answer my question. Why don't you fly over Europe supersonic?
Because Europe is very heavily populated, and we have chosen a route across desert where there are hardly any people.
Even on areas where there's no population, you fly subsonic.
No, the route that we have is very heavily populated within Europe.
But if, as Dr. Horan now say, if it is hardly to be heard, why don't you fly supersonic?
No, I'm not saying it is hardly heard. Alan is saying that on this particular flight, the first one that came, on Das Island, they put out very sensitive measuring equipment.
Did you put the sound measuring equipment?
We were waiting out for it. It was about 8 o'clock.
It was in the evening, yeah.
Friday evening, I remember.
How much did you get?
Very, I mean, people were aware that it had flown over, that's about all.
But the other day I got a complaint that it has done a very enormous explosion on the way to Al Ain. You know the supersonic, what you call it, boom, yes. So I told him we better think of to do something.
It's quite clear that the ruler has not had a change of heart. And of course, Phillips has been doing something about it. Ever since the rumours of trouble began, messages have been flying to and fro between Britain and the Gulf. In London, since diplomatic efforts have failed to placate the ruler, the airline is faced with the tricky task of working out how to accommodate his sudden whim. They've been busy calculating all the consequences of this new Concord crisis. At British Airways headquarters, Speedbird House, they face a straightforward challenge. Can they find an alternative route that avoids the palace and which Concord can still fly supersonically without incurring too many penalties in terms of time, speed, fuel consumption and payload? Though the question is clear enough, for Concord's Chief Navigational Officer, Tim Guest, finding the answer is fiendishly complex. Compared with subsonic flight, rerouting Concord has several extra dimensions. It must avoid populated areas, allow uninterrupted flight during acceleration, stay within range of ground-based navigational aids, and still take the shortest possible route to Singapore. Concord has had its ultimatum. 2 weeks to find a new route or the Singapore service will cease. There are brighter prospects in the desert, where help is at hand for the stranded sales team.
That looks like a crate of Newcastle brown he's got in the back.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Behind here? Look backwards, you won't go from. And tonight, John Hanson, this is your life. Thanks very much. Shall I? Yes, sure. Okay. He's done it before. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I tell you something. We've just hit the rush hour again. No, we're okay, thanks. Tell Mother I'm all right.
On the stage I stand a hero and a martyr to my trade. And I carry the reminders of all the gigs I've played in, like last Tuesday at the Irish Club in Luton, where I fled in mortal fear with the imprint of a Guinness bottle stamped upon me ear. La la la, la la la, la la la. Ya na ya.
At last, Asab Oil Camp. Not the easiest of markets to reach, but the toughest part is still to come. The Concord drama continues. The major sector of its supersonic journey through the Gulf is over the Sultanate of Oman. It's crucial that there's no trouble here.
No, it has been telling us today. It's very busy.
Yes, we're very grateful to Your Excellency for allowing us to bring our Iranian flights that were going through Tehran through Muscat instead.
Most welcome. How about the Concord, you know, overflies?
Yes.
Any complaints yet?
In fact, we wanted to land better than overflying.
That's right.
Yes, no, we have no problems so far.
No.
As you know, we have selected the route.
Yes.
That the Concord should not fly over populated areas.
Yes.
So it will not cause any inconvenience or any damages, especially when they break sound.
Yes.
You know, on descending and ascending from Bahrain.
So there have been no problems?
Well, so far, no problems reported officially, but we consider this as a test, a trial to see how it goes.
Yes.
And there is no harm in changing maybe the route sometime if we find any problems, but so far nothing.
Thankfully, there are no problems for Concord in Oman. It's now up to those back in London to decide on the new route. Tim Guest has chosen the best of several unsatisfactory alternatives, all of which involve penalties of some kind.
Accelerate in this region and turn for a point around about here.
Yeah. So that will mean going south. We don't have to touch Qatar, do we? We go into Saudi Arabian territory straight away, after the sea.
Yep.
And then down over that little bit of Abu Dhabi. It looks a tiny route altogether, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
Far
fewer turns in it.
And then the standard, we pick up the original route then, really south of India, don't we? And then south of Colombo, across north of Sumatra, and then into the deceleration phase running down the Malacca Straits.
Yes, it's exactly the same after South Colombo.
Right.
No change.
Yep, and on into Singapore, eh?
Yes.
All this at the lovely Mark II.
Yes.
Now, what we've got to do, Tim, is to work out the penalties on this route as opposed to our current route from which we have got to change. We're going to have to look very carefully at the extra miles of supersonic and subsonic flight that this new track of yours is going to produce, and bear in mind, of course, that for every extra 4 miles, that is 1 passenger off our payload.
Yes, well, it's going to be a greater distance to acceleration, and it'll also be a greater total overall mileage, so that'll cost us something in both directions.
The best alternative adds 30 miles to the journey, which means more fuel and fewer passengers. One more burden for Concord. But at least the serenity of the ruler's palace is assured.
Because you're living on your past. I'll tell you, you're living literally on your past.
At the oil camp, the sales team face the kind of barrage that all salesmen must learn to live with.
And you don't think we are?
No. We flew from Heathrow to Los Angeles. The service was mediocre. A 2-hour layover in Los Angeles. We picked up an Air New Zealand flight. what a difference. We took off at 5... Wait a minute, listen to me.
I will listen to you as well.
I don't know if you're a PR man or what you are.
I'm going to have a chance to answer back, am I?
Yeah, of course you are.
Good.
I'm just going to finish this. The Air New Zealand service over British Airways was so superior, it wasn't true. It really wasn't.
I can only accept your word.
If you don't cater for the individual, you don't cater for anyone. Next time I'm going to fly Sabina, lucky.
Yeah, but you said compare us with Air New Zealand before. You said we were
no
not
comparison.
No, I know.
They're in a small airline business, you're in the large.
There is nothing wrong with Air New Zealand at all. They're very good. They're very good. But we have lots of people that say this. I have people come into my office one day, quite literally, and they'll come in, they say, I flew in on British Airways last night and it was dreadful. It really was dreadful. And there's absolutely no explanation. You can get a bad flight. Or they can go to another airline, they will say, Airline X was dreadful. Or they'll say, well, they were great. You take 10 flights with British Airways. You take 10 flights with another airline, and you'll see the difference. There's no, but one flight is nothing.
The fortunes of the airline are in the hands of the folk singer, but that's what he's paid for.
I keep my pants up with a ball of twine. I keep my flies wide open all the time. And every time a girl comes into line, I pull the twine. I pull the twine. Thank you. I've got a mate in Cork who is beautiful. He's the sort of guy, if you said to him, like, if you're walking on the road, look at that poor dead pigeon, he'd say, where? Hang on, the Red Cross has arrived. Is it really? I've been told this is the stuff the Pope drinks. Jesus, no wonder they carry him around in the chair half the time.
Murphy can win over an audience and perhaps make them forget that, inevitably, sometimes some airlines are better than others, and that travel, despite everything, is a commodity that goes beyond the pocket to sometimes touch the heart.
I dream I hear a fiddle play, or maybe it's a notion. I dream I see white horses dance upon that other ocean. And it's a long, long way from Clare to here. It's a long, long way from Clare to here. Oh, it's a long, long way. It gets farther day by day. Oh, it's a long, long way from Clare to here. Oh, it's a long, long way from Clare to here.
Well, during the last few weeks, we've had a bit of a problem with Concord transit rights down in the Gulf. And, Jerry, perhaps you could bring us up to date about that.
Yes, Eastern Division have been working with flight operations on a new track to try to...
What was a real crisis down the line has now become a routine report to the airline's executive board.
They produced a new track which cuts part of the Abu Dhabi territory, but also goes across the Saudi Arabian border and through the Oman. And this avoids all those densely populated villages. We've been negotiating this. Manager Gulf, in conjunction with our ambassador, has been in Jeddah and negotiating with the Saudi authorities, and I'm glad to be able to tell you that they've been very helpful about it. As a result of that, we expect to be able to get clearance on the new track, which will be acceptable to all three authorities.
Well, that's very good news. Of course, the problem is essentially one for the government, but in this case, we seem to have been able to save them a bit of trouble with the help of the ambassador and getting this little difficulty out of the way. We can reasonably depend on having stability through the Gulf area anyway for some time to come. There's no reason to expect any further problems. Would you say the same of the whole Middle East?
I think it's a very difficult area, of course, very sensitive area, and it's impossible really to predict what's likely to happen in the future in the general area.
Jack, your people are quite happy about it, are they?
Yes, it's worked out reasonably well. There were, of course, great dangers, but if we had not been able to achieve the routing that has been so successfully negotiated, we could have suffered a severe payload restriction.
Yeah. Has anybody got any questions about this one? It's apt to be rather sensitive.